We're joined now by U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price. Mr. Price, thank you so much for joining us. Let me start by asking, does the State Department have any more details about the strike on the Mariupol theater and the survival of civilians who may still be trapped there?
Linsey, good to be with you. We don't have any additional details we're prepared to share at the moment. What we've all seen is the searing imagery from today, from recent days, continued Russian strikes against civilian targets. We saw today the Russians take a strike against a target, against a site that was clearly labeled as having children inside. And we've seen the footage from that strike, just as we've seen the footage from the Russian attack against the maternity hospital in Mariupol just a couple days ago now. Each and every day, we see new examples of Russian atrocities, of Russian violence being perpetrated against the Ukrainian people.
And to that point, we heard President Biden call Vladimir Putin a, quote, murderous dictator and a pure thug today. Just yesterday, he referred to him as a war criminal. But do you feel that there'll be any concrete action now or in the future to try to hold Putin directly accountable for these attacks on civilians in Ukraine?
Well, Linsey, it's not just President Biden. You heard him yesterday speaking from the heart, speaking as a human, and it is impossible for anyone almost to watch what is happening on a daily basis, as we've just been discussing, and to come away from that without concluding on some level that the Russians are perpetrating war crimes. You heard from Secretary Blinken today that he agrees with the opinion that President Biden expressed yesterday. Every day we are collecting additional evidence that is pointing to the perpetration of war crimes on the part of the Russian Federation. What we're doing here at the State Department, we are collecting that, we are analyzing it, we are sharing it with partners and allies around the world, including partners who have their own investigations into potential war crimes on the part of the Russian Federation. All of this will feed into various accountability mechanisms. We are going to see to it that if war crimes have been committed, and I think we'll have a very good sense of that in relatively short order, that those behind them will be held to account.
And there has been some ongoing diplomacy between Ukrainian and Russian officials, but Secretary of State Blinken expressed some skepticism of that process today because Russia has not slowed down their attacks. So is there a diplomatic path forward, or is the U.S. view that the Ukrainians will have to defeat or at least hold off Russians military-wise in order for this conflict to eventually end?
There has to be a diplomatic path forward, and I say that because only through diplomacy will we be able to bring this conflict to a close. We've heard a number of characterizations about how various diplomatic initiatives are going or are not going. What we care much more about is less what we hear and what we and actually what we see. And what we've seen on the ground, what we've seen from the skies, are continued Russian bombardment of including civilian targets in Ukraine, continued loss of life on the part of the Ukrainian people, continued violence perpetrated by Russia.
And we also heard Secretary Blinken warn once again today about the potential of Russia using chemical attacks against Ukraine. Is there any new intelligence prompting that concern?
Well, it's something we're concerned about, and we're concerned about it principally for two reasons. Number one, we know Russia's track record. We know Russia has used chemical agents against perceived dissidents on Russian soil in Europe, in the UK, in one case. And two, we know the Russian playbook. And we're very concerned to hear various Russian officials accuse the United States, accuse Ukraine, accuse others of planning, preposterously planning chemical attacks of our own. We know the Russians have this tactic of projection, in other words, accusing others of what it is that they may actually be planning to do. So you marry those things together, and that explains our concern.
And President Biden is scheduled to speak with Chinese President Xi tomorrow. What's the goal of that call? And how far do you expect that President Biden will go in outlining the potential cost to China if they do support Russia's actions in Ukraine in any form?
Well, the goal of that call is to follow up on the session that the National Security Advisor had with his Chinese counterpart earlier this week. And the National Security Advisor was very clear about two things with his Chinese counterpart. Number one, our concern that the People's Republic of China, the PRC, may seek to compensate Russia for some of its economic losses, its financial losses, even its military losses on the battlefield, providing it potentially with military equipment. And number two, he laid out that there would be very strong implications on the part of the United States, on the part of our allies and partners around the world. I expect the president will deliver a very similar message to President Xi. Of course, this is an expansive bilateral relationship. It is probably the most consequential bilateral relationship on the face of the earth, so there is plenty to discuss. But at the top of that agenda will be the ongoing war Russia is perpetrating against Ukraine.
And I'd like to ask you also about WNBA star Brittney Griner, whose detention in Russia has now been extended, as you know, until May. What's the State Department doing to ensure her safety and try to secure her release?
Well, Linsey, every time an American is detained overseas, our team springs into action. That's precisely what happened in this case. We've been in constant contact with Brittney Griner's legal team, with the WNBA, with others involved in her case to try to provide appropriate support. We're concerned because we have made consistent asks for consular access to Brittney Griner. That is to say, we have requested that our personnel based in our embassy in Moscow be able to see Brittney Griner, to evaluate the conditions, her conditions, the conditions in which she is being detained, and to provide all forms of support. The Russians have not yet permitted us to do so. The Russians are obligated to allow this type of consular access under the Vienna Convention. We're going to continue to insist that they allow us access to Brittney Griner, just as we be permitted access to all Americans who are detained in Russia.
Ned Price, spokesperson for the State Department, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Linsey.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.